You are watching Access LaPorte County Channel 97. Coming up next is the November 14th meeting of the Michigan City Board of Cemetery Trustees. You can find more information for this meeting at www.accesslaportecounty.org.
Trustees,
Okay, that's
dated Thursday, November 14th, 2024. Roll call from Roxanne.
Davis Bush,
Present.
Bernadette Demke, Renee Bauer,
here.
Stephen Janis,
Here.
Vera Gaston, Pastor Carroll,
Here.
Kat Couches.
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum. We'll move on to the approval of minutes. Need a motion to approve.
I so moved.
Second.
Excellent. We'll vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any negative? Motion carries. Finance report from the fine one gentleman waiting for the second from Verizon.
Yeah, perhaps we could maybe go in reverse, so I can kind of do the market update. Unless there's having car issues or something, but last week the Fed had their meeting and they cut interest rates by 25 basis points, which was expected. That's kind of what the market had intended and what kind of baked into the interest rate picture and the stock market even. The market is expecting another 25 basis points cut at the December or the January meeting. So one or the other is kind of what's on the table right now. It's not set in stone, but that's just kind of the general idea of what is expected to happen. The Fed really didn't give any clear guidance on future rate cuts, but the expectation is that interest rates will continue to fall through next year. And I'll give you kind of an example in a minute here of what the market is expecting going forward. But the Fed basically has maintained that they're going to continue their data-driven approach. So they're not going to make any knee-jerk decisions or reactions based on politics or based on anything but actual economic data that's actually coming through. The money market rate in our accounts is down to about 4.6. So that's been pretty much directly affected by the Fed rate cuts, which was what we expected. That money market generally is linked to shorter-term treasuries, which the Fed has more control over. So that was definitely expected, and that's what has happened. The yield curve, which is kind of a graphical representation of how interest rates are across different maturities. So let's say you start looking at a 1-month maturity going out to a 10-year maturity. The yield curve is going to show us where all the different rates are for all those different maturities. And the curve is relatively flat right now from 1 year out to 10 years. The spread between that 1 year to 10-year treasury right now is 3.31 to 4.41. So it's a very tight spread. Whether you invest in 1 year, or 2 year, or 5 year, or 10 year, you're getting roughly the same interest rate. So we've been talking to the clients that we manage money for, and I'm just saying that locking in a 4% plus interest rate for multiple years right now looks pretty attractive. We feel like the current fixed income environment really presents an opportunity to consider moving from cash into longer dated fixed income securities. And one of the things we've been doing is creating or investing in 3 to 7 year bond ladders in our managed portfolios. So, if you have a client that doesn't need access to their funds for multiple years, we can construct a ladder, an idea of CDs and treasuries that are going to mature, every say 6 months or every year, to kind of spread out the interest rate risk. Again, we do expect interest rates next year to move lower. An example right now is a 6-month treasury. It's currently yielding 4.4%. The market is expecting that same 6-month treasury, if you were to invest into it next fall, only to yield about 2.9. So that's another kind of example where locking in for 1, 2, 3, 4 years may make some sense to kind of mitigate that risk and add some more certainty to the returns. But overall, the soft landing that we've been talking about for the economy, seems like for over a year now, it's still on track. We don't see any major breaks in the economy, any major breaks in the job market, no recession on the horizon that can be determined. And the incoming administration, we have a changeover of the presidency in January. We have the Senate and the House of Representatives both being controlled by Republicans. They've pledged to kind of reduce some of the regulations in businesses or kind of change the way that they're enforced. So overall, the stock market's looking at that as a positive for future earnings growth. Future earnings growth affects and gives better hiring probabilities, better jobs, higher paying jobs. People can spend more money in the economy, so that is looked at as a driver for the economy going forward too. So all in all, we have a cautiously optimistic view on the economy and the markets going forward. Like I said, though, we do expect interest rates to continue to move down next year. So just kind of keep that in mind, I'd say.
Okay, we'll accept your half of the
I
financial.
apologize for him.
Okay.
He's always very, very prompt, so there must be something going on. So I'll definitely make sure we get those reports sent out to you.
Oh, okay.
And then we can send out a quick summary, as well. But I do
He's
apologize.
actually going to show up, hopefully.
Yeah, we'll send it to you.
Okay, we'll await his arrival and finish up when he shows up.
Hopefully he'll join us here.
Okay, yeah, just keep looking out the window.
That'll make it
We're
quicker.
moving on to bills presented for payment as presented. Now, everybody should have a list dated 11/14/24 of all the current bills. Do we have any questions or comments on those? I previously asked the superintendent about the one about the floating technology solutions. It actually is for the pond.
Yeah. Keystone, that's LP,
That's
the LP.
propane.
Any further discussion or comment?
Go.
Very good. We'll vote on this. We're going to say all in favor of accepting the bills presented for payment.
Aye.
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 And negatives. None. This motion will carry. And since we're still looking out the window, we'll start with the superintendent's report.
Okay, so burials last month, they were about, again, in line with what we've been doing every month, a total of 26. We had 7 ash, 3 full, for a total of 10 at Greenwood, 7 ash, 3 or 6 full, and then 3 entombments at Swan Lake for a total of 16. That just kind of shows where we're at for the year, about average, and what we're doing total-wise. Next item would be the discussion of new rules for Saturday burials. And I think I had mentioned this in one of our previous meetings that the mayor has allocated an additional amount. I'll hold on to it.
All right. We'll put that on hold.
Sir?
Aye, thank you.
Sir?
Thank you, sir.
There you are.
And you can take 3 of them and take it to the sink. And then I'll take.
Let's do the other one. 1,
Okay.
2,
Okay.
and 3. Insert for
Well, Goody. Want to be left out? Okay, now we continue with the report.
Very well. Thank you, sir. And again, my apologies. The report, beginning on page 1, starting with the summary with respect to the permanent maintenance Greenwood account. The account was up 0.31% for the month and 2.78% year to date. The next account, of course, is the permanent maintenance Swan Lake account. That account was up 0.31% for the month and 3.04% year to date. In the extension fund account, the account was up 0.28% for the month and 2.82% year to date. In the merchandise and commissions fund account, the account was up 0.2% for the month and up 3.50% year to date. Turning now to page 2, and taking a look specifically at the permanent maintenance Greenwood account. The money market is currently yielding 4.78%, which is down from last month's yield of 4.83%. The mutual funds overall yield is at 3.35%, which is up from last month's yield of 3.28%, and the overall yield in the account is at 3.84%, which is up from last month's yield of 3.80%. Turning now to page 3 and looking at the permanent maintenance Swan Lake account. The mutual funds overall yield is at 3.34%, which is up from last month's yield of 3.35%. The overall yield in the account is at 4.18%, which is up from last month's yield of 4.13%. Turning now to page 4, to the extension fund account. The mutual funds overall yield is at 3.51%, which is up from last month's yield of 3.39%. And the overall yield in the account is at 3.93%, which is up from last month's yield of 3.84%. And finally, on page 5, the merchandise fund. The mutual funds overall yield is at 3.49%, which is up from last month's yield of 3.38%. And the overall yield in the account is at 4.45%, which is down from last month's yield of 4.47%.
We need a motion to accept.
I make a motion to accept the reading of our accounts.
I second that motion.
Excellent. Full vote. All in favor of accepting? Negatives? No negatives, the motion passes. And the gentleman from Horizon are excused.
Thank
Did good. Filling in the gaps. Now, we'll get back to the superintendent's report.
As I was saying, in next year's budget for 2025, the mayor has allocated additional funding for overtime for our department, which was tough because she had to make substantial cuts in a lot of different departments throughout the city. So we're fortunate to be getting what overtime money we are so that we can resume Saturday burials. But I just want to put it out there and go through the rules here in public, because I know we're going to get some pushback from some of our funeral home directors, because we're not going to full-time Saturday burials again. So, but I just want to stress the reason for that is because of the city's financial situation. We're having to conserve money this year. So everybody has been given a copy of the proposed Saturday burials. So I'll go through each one and I'll explain the reasoning behind each one. We'll do 2 Saturdays per month, and we're going to have 2 employees working each one of those Saturdays. So they're going to be really stretched for time, especially if we have 1 burial here and 1 burial at Greenwood. There's going to be transportation time and then just cleanup time for each cemetery, because there's equipment that has to be pulled out and put away before they move on to the next burial. So the dates of the Saturday burials will be chosen by the cemetery superintendent and approved at the cemetery board, by the cemetery board at the December meeting. And so we would like to pick the Saturdays that we're going to do next year and have the board approve those so that the funeral homes all have advance notice of when Saturday funerals are available.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is that 2 burials at each cemetery? Or?
No, we'll do two burials a Saturday, so that could be 2 burials here or 2 burials at Greenwood, or a combination of both.
All right.
So,
2 at each?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The cemetery superintendent reserves the right to adjust Saturday burial dates due to unforeseen weather or manpower issues. Again, we'll have 2 employees working per Saturday. That's due to the fact that there could be some times where we have 2 employees on vacation at the same time. So we have 4 full-time employees that perform burials. So we'll have half of those present every Saturday that we're doing burials. So Saturday burials must be scheduled at least 48 hours prior to the service. Saturday burials will be limited to 2 burials per Saturday and will be scheduled on a first-come, first-served basis. To ensure that cemetery employees have sufficient time to accommodate burials taking place at both cemeteries, both services or burial services must be scheduled for either 10 a.m. or 1 p.m. Normally on a regular weekday, we pretty much accommodate any burial time between the hours of pretty much 7 and
Before 3.
7 and 3.
After 3, they pay an additional.
However, like I said, there's going to be time constraints here, so we can't have one taking place at 12 and expect the employees to clean up everything at Greenwood and get over here and have the hole dug for a 1 o'clock service. So we have to adhere strictly to the schedules, which is why we're going to set the times for Saturday burials, which will be 10 a.m. and 1 p.m.
So you'll use the same 2 employees?
Yes.
For the day?
Yes.
At either location? Okay.
And this is probably the most important one here and probably where we'll get some pushback. The body of the deceased must be on site and ready for interment at the scheduled time. And that's, of course, because if our 10 a.m. service is late arriving, that's going to cause our employees to arrive at Swan Lake for theirs late, and it's going to create a bad situation and bad perception by the public if they think we're holding up their service when it's not. It's somebody that's arriving late to our previous service. So, and when we go through the pricing here, pricing adjustments here in a minute, you'll see that in the past we've had kind of a late fee or a late surcharge for burials that arrive after the scheduled time. In this case, what we've heard from the funeral directors was they'll pay any price they want in order to have a Saturday burial. So our concern is that if we don't have some kind of strict rule, that it may be abused so that we have people arriving late to either our first or second service, which is going to throw the whole day off. And rather than charging an extra fee, which some of them will be happy to pay, I'll read this to you. The body of the deceased must be on site and ready for interment at the scheduled time. If the body of the deceased is not ready for interment at the scheduled time, the funeral home responsible for that service will lose their Saturday burial privileges for 30 calendar days. We thought this will get their attention rather than just charge them a late fee, like say, which they would probably be happy to pay. So, and this has to be done because if like I say, if somebody's late at our early one, it's gonna look bad if we're not here to perform a service at 1 p.m. So again, my plan was just to present this to everybody, have everybody take it under advisement until our December meeting. That way anybody watching the meeting, any funeral home directors, will also reach out to them and give them a copy of this too before the next meeting, so that if anybody wants to remonstrate against these rules, they'll have an opportunity to at our next meeting.
So we'll table this motion till the next meeting.
Yes. The next item would be pricing update. And when I started out here, I learned that I think the last time we raised prices on any of our merchandise or services was 2021. But some of the services and merchandise hasn't been raised for years before that.
2010.
Yeah, 2010. So, and what I found was that a lot of the prices that we're charging are lower than the cost that we're paying our suppliers for certain merchandise. So we're actually losing money on a lot of the services we're providing. So before we even started with this, we called around to a lot of other area funeral homes and comparable funeral homes. So I'll start with our services, and I just want to bring this up just to show you kind of a comparison where we're at compared to apologize. So we called, like I say, we called around, and what I found was we're one of the few cemeteries around that are still ran by a municipality. Most of the funeral homes and the cemeteries are actually privately owned. So when we tried to solicit some of the pricing from some of the cemeteries, they were kind of secretive because I guess they don't want. There's a lot of leeway, I guess, when they negotiate prices, and a lot of the pricing is package deals too. So if a funeral home owns a cemetery, they'll make it a package deal where you have to have the embalming, the service, the merchandise, the burial plot, all purchased as a package. So they weren't willing to let us know a breakdown of each one of those services. So as you can see currently, the main one, you'll see right now for a burial plot, our cheapest burial plot, we're charging $1,325. That's compared to $2,225 at Graceland and Valpo. Probably a good one to compare it to would be here at St. Stan's. They recently raised their rates, and I understand that they're considering raising the rates again, but they currently charge $1,300 for their cheapest lot. Going over here, the opening closing is actually the service to dig the grave, bury the body, and then obviously. So currently we're charging $1,365. So we're one of the lower ones around. If you compare us to Chapel Lawn and Cherville, even St. Stan's is charging $2,000 for opening and closing. So we're about $600 below that. Cremains opening and closing, and what that is if an urn is being buried on a gravesite, that's what that is. A niche, that would be placing an urn inside of one of the niches at one of our mausoleums. And then Saturday surcharges are listed over here too. Like I said, there was I'll show it to you when we get back to the other chart here, but we had a pretty complex system for charging different surcharges for Saturday burials. We're going to eliminate that and just go with the rules as we discussed earlier. And then most of the other cemeteries don't really have a special charge for infants. Currently, we're charging $610 for infant burial in Babyland at Greenwood. Most of that cost goes, in what we do, this one's kind of unique, is that The 610 includes the burial plot, which is located in Babyland. It includes the actual opening and closing, so burying the child. And then it also includes the marker that gets placed on burial. And that marker itself is around
Is it at
510.
It's like 510.
Yeah. So most of this cost is going to pay for the marker that we're installing on the burial site. So I just wanted to show you this so you get some kind of idea how we compare it to the other cemeteries before I go on to the chart to show you what we're thinking of raising our prices to. It's kind of hard to read here, but I did pass this out to everybody too, so everybody has a copy. And I'll just go over, highlight a couple of things that stood out. All the items listed in red are items where we're currently underwater, which means we're paying for more for the merchandise than we're actually charging, so we're losing a lot of money. Specifically, the mausoleum niche plates. We're currently charging $445, but we're actually paying our supplier $451. The emblems for our crypts, we're charging $112, but we're paying our supplier $149. Our final date for the crypts, which is the final date of death year that we place on there, we're charging $72, but we currently pay $165 for that plate. And then, like I said, you can read most of this for yourself, but there were a couple that stood out. For example, our standard scroll, we're charging $210 for, but we're paying $343 for, so we're losing a lot of money on that. So, on the chart I have up here, the first column, the price, is what we currently charge. The second column is the cost that we're paying our suppliers. And then the third column is our suggested price. So what I would like to do is pass this, obviously everybody already has a copy of this. I would ask that the board table this and then vote on it at the next meeting. And this would be for the purpose of giving anybody that wishes to a chance to remonstrate or question any of our charges. So if anybody has any questions right now, I can answer them, or I can answer them at the next meeting after you look through our charges.
This would begin January 1st.
Correct. Yes. So the second page, obviously this is pretty much all of our merchandise that we're charging for. Before I move on, I should note that one of the last lines there, the government markers, which are it's the granite that the veterans markers get installed upon. We reviewed those. The piece of granite that is built to accept the base, we were charging $645 for, but we're only paying $389 for that. So I chose I'm recommending that we reduce the price on that, because it seems like we're really kind of gouging or taking advantage of veterans by charging almost a $300 profit on that. So I asked that be reduced to $450. So the next chart, the next page would be the pricing for all of our services. And again, this is probably going to be the source of the most concern, because the prices need to go up, and they need to go up substantially just to be competitive or in line with what other cemeteries are charging, and also to accommodate some of the increases in our pricing. Obviously, our employees got a raise last year, so our personnel costs are higher. We're going to be using sand instead of backfilling with the clay that we have now, so the cost of that sand is more expensive. So a burial spot or a burial space in our Christus, Good Shepherd, or Cross and Resurrection, or our Peace Gardens, which are all our flat stone sections. Currently, we're charging $1,325 for that burial space. We're recommending an increase to $1,700 for that space. an adult burial space for the Christus, Good Shepherd, Cross, and Resurrection, Peace and Garden for 2 or more. So what it was there's always been a kind of a discount if you want to buy 2 burial spaces next to each other, a husband and wife, or anything like that. It was $2,600. We're asking that be raised to $3,200, which would be a savings of $200 if you bought 2 instead of 1. If you bought 2 separate ones, it'd be $3,400, so you'd be saving $200 still. An adult burial space in our Serenity section, which is our upright section here at Swan Lake. We were charging $1,400 or $1,440 for that space, and we're asking that to be raised to $1,000. And the reason for this price increase, we have no more burial spaces left at Greenwood, so there are no other options for upright burial other than Serenity out here. So we want to make sure that we're charging enough so that there's still a savings between that and the flat section, so that we can still encourage people to use the flat section out here. And the reason for that, obviously, is because the maintenance out here at Swan Lake is a lot less than Greenwood. There's a lot less maintenance involved in cutting flat over a flat marker compared to having to have 5 employees like we do out at Greenwood to string trim around all the upright headstones. Cremains interment, that would be the burial of an urn in a burial spot. We were charging $665. We're recommending that be increased to $850. The cremains interment for Saturday, which would be the Saturday burial of ashes, would be $1,200. You'll see there's no current price for that listed on here, is because we have never allowed cremains to be buried on a Saturday, because we couldn't justify, or apparently that was before my time, but apparently we couldn't justify the cost of the manpower or overtime for the minimal charge that we were charging for the burial of cremains. But my thought is that since we're going to have the employees here pretty much every other Saturday anyway, it's not costing us anymore compared to a full burial of a grave site. So my recommendation would be that we start doing Saturday cremains burials. Roxanne and myself went to the Cemetery Association convention last month. They presented some facts that was kind of eye-opening in that I think they said about 70% of burials are now cremains. So people aren't being buried as much as they are interned in ashes. And I think they said about 40% of the people who are being cremated don't even make it to the cemetery. They end up on a shelf or a fireplace at home. So, right.
Oh, yeah.
Our second privilege charge, and if you don't know what that is, when we sell a burial plot, we allow 2 people to be buried in that burial plot. One of those, now if somebody wants to put two urns in that plot, they can do that, or they can put a full casket in a cremains in there too. So when we do that, obviously they're buying one grave. If they buy it today, they'll come in here and pay $1,700 for that grave site, and then when their next loved one passes away and they come back and want to use that same grave site, we charge them an additional $550 rather than charging them another full $1,700 for that same burial site. So they're saving money. So, like I say, it's $550 now. We recommend that it be increased to $600. Our cremains niche placement, and that's where we place the urn in one of the shelves in the mausoleum. We charge $550 currently for that. I'm recommending no price increase for that because it's very little manpower to take the screws out of the niche plate and turn the ashes in there. So I think $550 is more than enough for now. Saturdays, we'd like to increase that to $1,000 just because we're spending more overtime to supply personnel to do that. Mausoleum entombment, that's $880 right now. We're recommending that be increased to $900, and that'll put us in line with the other surrounding funeral homes. An entombment on a Saturday, we're requesting that be increased to $1,400. Our adult interment charges, and that's the opening, closing, that's the charge to actually dig the hole for the grave and then cover it back up once the service is complete. As I stated, we currently charge $1,365 for that. We'd like to increase that to $1,700. And again, that'll still put us a few hundred below a lot of the surrounding cemeteries. And then our Saturday charge, and again, like I say, you'll see on the bottom of this page, you'll see a couple lines where there's a strike through of the charges. Those were all the different Saturday charges we had to just make everything more simple to understand for not only us, but for the public too. We'd rather just incorporate that charge into the actual burial itself. So as I stated, a normal interment on a weekday would be $1,700. If somebody wants to have a Saturday burial, that's going to be $2,500. An adult interment with a chapel service, and that's what that is if a funeral home comes in here with a body, rather than going straight to the grave site, if they want to go to the chapel first and have a service there and then go from there to the grave site. Currently, we don't have an extra charge for that. It's always been free, but it is more work for our employees because they have to wait for the service to be done at the chapel and then either escort or actually transport the body from the chapel to the grave site. So it's more work. So we're asking that charge be $1,800. And if they'd like to have a chapel service with a burial on a Saturday, it would be $2,600. And then currently, we charge extra money to set up the tent for a service because it's a lot more work. I think currently we charge them about $400 more to set the tent up for a service. We'd like to increase that to $2,400. And then we'd also like to stipulate that we will not have tent services on Saturdays because we won't have time to set it up.
It's been a while since the tent's been used.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, and it's kind of in poor shape too, so more likely next year I'll be coming back to the board to request money to purchase a new tent because it has holes in it and it's.
That's what I wondered.
We discourage it out here,
Right.
because just the way it is out here,
Yeah.
you know, with weather, even with the tent up, if it gets bad,
Right.
you know.
And we
have to
only have one
travel.
tent, so we have to transport it back and forth between the two cemeteries.
So,
Okay.
I already explained this charge, the Babyland infant burials. Currently, they're $610, and most of that is paying for the infant marker. We're recommending that be increased to $700. And this will be discussed in a future meeting, but our Babyland is almost at capacity. I think we have somewhere between 3 and 5 spaces left for infants at Greenwood. So we've been pursuing or looking into creating a new Babyland out here at Swan Lake. I did get some pricing from an engineering firm just to plot out, because it has to be plotted out by an engineer. It all has to be recorded with the recorder's office, but obviously we want to probably do more for them than just designating the field for them. We probably want some sidewalks, a statue, probably just some decorations out there, so it's going to be a substantial amount of money.
Right.
So our veterans section, and that'd be the section over here by the Veterans Circle where the flags are at. We currently charge $720 for a burial site there, and I'm recommending no increase for that. And then we currently charge $400 extra if somebody wants to have a full casket service in one of our mausoleums. And a full casket service is considered an open casket.
if they want to
So-
view here and not at the funeral home.
which takes more time and more setup.
So that would be added to,
Yes, the $400 actually gets added to any
Oh,
other
yeah,
charges.
that would be, yeah.
So $400 seems reasonable right now, so I'm not asking for an increase in that.
I have a question.
Yes,
On the interment with the chapel service, had you considered going a little more on that? Because
we could.
it's, I mean, there's cleaning involved as well.
Yeah, and like I say, if, I'm sure you want to table this till the next meeting.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
if you come back, it's not too much trouble to change.
We can discuss
any-
that.
Yes,
Because it's 1,700 right now, graveside, and then using the building is only 100 more.
right.
Or, yeah, so, okay.
And then the final page. And this is our disinterment charges for digging up a casket. And the charges depend on whether we're digging the casket up to move it to another area of the cemetery, which has kind of happened, I think, twice since I've been here already. And then there's a different charge if we're digging the body up to be moved out of state or out of our cemetery system. So there was different pricing based on how deep the casket was buried or the ash burial. So just to simplify things, the current price for a disinterment for a casket would be $27.30. We're recommending that we keep that at the current charge. And the same for an out of system disinterment tube. And cremains interment or disinterment, pretty much we're recommending no changes on any of our disinterments. And then the final charge on here would be our government markers set in concrete. And what this is, over at Greenwood, we allow the government markers to be installed on a concrete foundation rather than a piece of granite. We charge $175 for that, and what that includes, basically what it is, we have a form that the employees over there pour. We have to buy bags of concrete and pour the foundation. So we currently charge $175 for that. We're not recommending that price increase. Pretty much most, if not all, of the veterans charges we left alone, just as a service to our veterans. And again, I just want to reiterate, mostly for the public, that the reason we need to do this is because the cemetery department is one of the only city departments that doesn't operate strictly off of tax money. Most of our operation costs are supplemented by what we're taking in on merchandise and the sale of plots. But even after all of that takes place at the end of the year, we're still in the hole. It's always been that way, especially now that Greenwood is no longer making a lot of money because we don't have any more burial spaces over there. So, for example, this year, and it's not just unique to this year, it's been happening for a number of years, the city supplements us at the end of the year with $350,000 out of the riverboat fund, I believe. So, and that riverboat fund is quickly drying up, and the mayor's trying to kind of curtail a lot of the spending out of that riverboat fund. So even with the price increases that I'm suggesting today, I don't see us coming close to breaking even. So I'm sure at the end of next year, the city's going to have to supplement our budget with more riverboat money. So, but at least now we'll have a starting point, so we can kind of go back at the end of next year and see how much we raised prices this year, how much it affected our bottom line next year, and maybe this time next year we come back and ask for another price increase.
Thank you.
Excellent.
So the next item I had here, the flooring update. I just wanted to give everybody in the public an update on what we're doing with the flooring. Obviously, since we had the flooring done here in the office, we've been waiting for the rest of it to be installed. So the Greenwood Mausoleum they'll be installing the new flooring in there from November 18th through November 21st. So in order to accommodate that, the Greenwood Mausoleum will be closed from November 18th through November 21st. And then through the following Monday, we will not allow any entombments to take place, because for an entombment to occur in that mausoleum, we have to bring in our hydraulic lift, and they recommended that we don't operate that lift on that flooring until it has a chance to set over the weekend. Our Serenity Mausoleum out here, which is our newer mausoleum, that will be closed November 25th through November 27th for the purpose of installing new flooring there. Our Swan Lake office windows. At the next meeting, I'm going to present an updated kind of accounting for all of the extension money and the ARPA money that we spent this year. We currently have approximately, I think, $32,000 left with the ARPA money, which is the COVID money from the federal government. We have to have that encumbered by the end of the year, otherwise it's going to go back to the city to be spent in another department. So I'm going to ask today that we approve a contract with the contractor to install new windows here in the office. You've probably noticed, if you ever walked around this building, that the siding is deteriorating. I think we can save the siding with new paint, hopefully, new paint and patching. But the windows can't be saved. Most of the window frames have degraded so bad that it's not worth saving. The issue is, without the contractors tearing into the building to see what kind of condition the substructure or the 2x4s are behind the siding, they're not sure what they're going to encounter. So some of the contractors I contacted were able to give me prices on installing new windows, but I was informed by those contractors that once they take the old windows out, if they find that they have to replace wood behind those windows, that they don't perform that service, so they would have to board the windows up until we hire another contractor to do that. So Meyer Glass and Trout Glass both provided pretty competitive pricing, but with those two contractors, they don't do the actual contracting work if there's any damage found behind the windows. So R&L Roofing would, but as you can see, there's substantially more. So Meyer Glass came in at $21,000, Trout Glass came in at $23,700. The Hendricks Experience, which is a local contractor, came in at $25,356, and R&L Roofing came in at $36,400. The Hendricks Experience stated that they will replace the wood. They don't just do windows, they do construction too, so they have the knowledge.
Price, yes. Replace the frame?
Within reason. Again, they don't know what they're gonna find there, but they will do it. So.
I'm sure there's gonna be damage.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So my recommendation to the board that would be that we accept the price from the Hendricks Experience for $25,356.
And that will cover any wood?
I'm sorry?
That will cover any wood replacement?
Yes. Okay, these are gonna be, currently we have a combination of wood and some type of vinyl or other material out there. These are gonna be vinyl windows. They're cheaper and they're gonna last a lot longer than wood. We're not gonna have to go back and repaint the frames every 5 or 10 years, so.
So that price includes if they find a little bit more than they'll still stay at that price? Okay.
And it was kind of the same situation when we bid out the flooring too. We had contractors that were cheaper on the flooring, but when they ripped up the old flooring, if they found anything that needed to be ground down or resurfaced, they were going to charge more, but they couldn't give us an exact price. So that's why we went with Carpet Town, who was a little bit higher, but they're not charging us if they find other work that has to be done underneath the old stuff. So.
Makes sense.
I've had work done by them and they're impeccable.
Hendricks? Yeah? Okay.
Good.
I move we accept that Hendricks Experience.
I'll second that.
Excellent. We'll vote. All in favor of accepting this proposal?
Aye.
Aye. Any negative? Motion carries.
And again, the funds for this will come out of what we have left in ARPA funding, so the work probably will not take place this year because we're too late in the season, but at least we're gonna have this money encumbered so that it's not gonna be taken away from us. So as long as we have a contract with this company, we can still spend the money next year as long as we have a contract in place, so.
Do we need to have all that money under contract?
Yeah, so we're gonna have a few
You're gonna have
thousand
more.
left. I do have some ideas for that. We have some windows that we need to replace at the Greenwood Mausoleum. They failed and they're foggy inside, so I've got estimates for that. At the next meeting, I'll ask that we approve that we have all the money used.
Take advantage of
Yeah.
that? Okay.
Just wanted to update the board on some of our projects, our main project that we've done since the last meeting. The Chapel of Chimes, which is our older mausoleum out here at Swan Lake. I think I've showed pictures of the condition of the landscaping before, where the water sits in between the sidewalk and the building. We hauled in a bunch of river rock, decorative river rock. So we've actually raised the level of the ground between the sidewalk and the building. So we're hoping that when we get a lot of rain or when the snow starts to thaw in the spring, that we're gonna get that water to run off across the sidewalk into the lawn, so we don't have a lake sitting there and water freezing in there. The only part we haven't done yet is the little alley between the two buildings out there. We wanna see how this works before because it's gonna be a lot more work to wheelbarrow all that stone in between the two buildings. So before we do that, we wanna make sure that the stone is actually gonna work and drain that water off. But at the same time, what we did, if you've ever been out there, you'll see the base units that are installed in the ground around the mausoleums. A lot of those had sunk in like 5 or 6 inches into the ground, so a lot of them were covered with dirt or stone. When we did this, we raised all of those units out, and there were some there's a plastic kind of canister in there that the base fits in. We found a lot of those that were broken, so we, as a courtesy to the public, we replaced a lot of those broken ones. So if you get a chance, if you want to go out there, I think it looks 100% better. And then I just wanted to give the board an update on our veterans marker situation. We have 2 groups that are raising money. I've been told, one of the groups actually placed an order for 15 pieces of granite. So that's been ordered, and that's actually ready to be picked up by them down in Georgia, I think. So the other group that's raising money said that they're having a lot of success, and they're actually going to be able to raise enough money to buy more granite than what we need. And what we'll do with the extra granite is keep it on hand so that in the future, when we have veterans that can't afford to install their markers, this group, the Guardian Riders, is actually going to donate these extra pieces of granite so that we don't have the granite sitting in the garage anymore. If they can't afford it, we're going to get it installed for them. So
Nice.
I believe, just an update on some of the other things. The Swan Shelter, I talked again to the Carpenters Union rep, and he assured me that they're going to get out here this fall yet and have our Swan Shelter built. Again, we have to pay for the materials, but all of the labor involved in building that is going to be supplied by our local Carpenters Union. So our pond fountain is ordered. Claims have been approved today, so we'll be able to send that check out tomorrow. It's already been built, so as soon as they get the check, they'll be able to ship that new fountain to us.
Oh, did you explain about that's gonna be covered because we got it in
Oh
on
yeah,
time?
they had a deal, there's LED lighting on this, so it comes with a remote, so we'll actually be able to change the colors of it, and that was thrown in, that was kind of a deal that they gave us.
I think it'd be a nice selling point when people go
Very
behind.
nice. Yeah.
But again, we're so late in the season that a lot of these other repairs are probably gonna have to wait until the spring, because we don't wanna sign a contract with these companies now and then have something happen between now and the time they can perform the work. But it is stuff that's, again, on the planning table and we'll get to next year, so. Again, I believe that's all I have.
All right. We Need a motion to accept the superintendent's report as presented, and table as needed.
So moved.
I can't help you second it.
Excellent. We'll vote. All in favor of this proposition, call superintendent's report.
Aye.
Aye.
All those against? Good, motion carries. We did old business. That's good. New business, we did that too. So we go for other unfinished business, if any.
I do have a question. We were talking about another zero turn mower.
Yes.
Did that, you're gonna talk?
So what happened was, obviously, the city was cutting everyone's budgets, so our wish list, we did get a few things, like say we got the increase in the overtime, we got an increase in some of our household budget, maintenance budgets, but there weren't really any major pieces of equipment being approved this year. So to make up for that, the mayor suggested that we consider using our extension fund again if we have any of those big purchase needs next year.
Okay.
So what she recommended was that this board approve transferring $100,000 of the extension fund into our budget. It's not going to be put in our budget to be spent blankly. The board will still have to approve any of that money that's spent, but rather than have to go in front of the city council every time we want to buy something, the mayor asked the city council to approve this $100,000 transfer so that the money's been there, it's already been approved by the council, but it will still have to, this board will still have to approve the expenditure of any of that money. My hope, if we can get by, is to not touch any of that 100,000, because we've spent, you'll see at the next meeting, I have a full accounting of all the money we've spent out of the extension fund. We spent a lot of money this year. I don't want to have to spend a whole lot. One of the things that we are going to have to spend the money on next year, our major project, will be the rehabilitation of the fence around Greenwood Cemetery, and that's going to be quite costly, I believe.
Okay.
I've contacted some of the contractors that we discussed at the last meeting. Only one of them has returned my call. They're coming out Monday morning to give me a quote on our fence. But again, I think the problem is that fence was more likely custom built. So if we replace any panels of it, it's going to be costly to have those panels replicated. So.
Did the insurance take care of any of the damage from the storm? I have one question. A lot of the headstones I noticed, and that, not a lot, but I'd say I saw a dozen or more, just from the outer, edge of the cemetery, that some of the tombstones were like sunken in and leaning really bad. And does any of that machinery that you had purchased last year, will that, help in lifting some of those or
On
leveling
the
some?
smaller ones, if somebody comes in at Greenwood and talks to Denise and says, hey, can you please adjust my headstone?
So
If it's
you
something
just-
small, we try to accommodate it.
Okay.
The problem is, a lot of the headstones at Greenwood are so old that we don't want to take on the liability of trying to correct them, because a lot of the family members, there are no family members alive anymore for a lot of the people, so we don't want to take the chance of breaking one of those when we're straightening it and then being responsible for replacing it. The other thing, everything over at Greenwood and here are set on concrete foundations. They're about 9 inches thick. Just last week, we were doing an older burial site out there. We had to remove the headstone in order to dig the grave for his family member. Well, we found that piece of foundation wasn't one of our normal ones that are precast by our contractor, Scott, or Harris Contract. What they did in years past, they had poured the foundation on site. So sometimes it was poured by a family member. So all of those old foundations are beginning to deteriorate to the point that they're crumbling. So we had one last week that we had to dig out and move, and when we did, the foundation started crumbling apart, and the family didn't want to spend the money for a new foundation, so we kind of pieced it back together as well as we could. But when you start trying to adjust some of these older ones, I know there's a lot over at Greenwood that are tilted and look like they're going to fall over. A lot of the old sandstone ones that are really brittle to begin with. So.
The ones I saw were granite, the pinky color granite or the copper color ones, and then a couple gray ones. but they weren't the real old cement-looking ones, you know?
Right.
One other question, when can people start putting their holiday, like wreaths on the graves? Is there a date
No.
set?
Now, because we already had our fall cleanup, so.
So they can start decorating.
Okay.
Yep.
I had a couple.
The only thing that we ask out here at Swan Lake, most of the flat, or a lot of the flat stones have the brass
Like
bases.
they've all been turned.
They've all been turned over because we
That's
don't want the
okay.
water sitting in there and freezing. So
Yeah.
we're asking the public not to turn it back over and put anything in them until spring.
And people have turned them over, and then if they'll come in and tell us, then they're liable if that cracks or damages or whatever, because we've already explained to them that if you leave it up in the winter, it's gonna crack. So they're aware of it.
And just on a closing note, we've had a great staff of seasonal employees working for us. We had 5 seasonal employees, which worked out great. They're all hard workers. That's why the cemeteries look so good, because of their efforts this year, especially our guys over at Greenwood that do all the string trimming. So next Friday will be their last day for the season. So I just want to publicly thank them for all their efforts. Next Friday, we're going to have a meal for them just to thank them for all their efforts.
Nice.
I'm not cooking.
Are you
Putting
certain?
that out there.
Any other comments or questions? We'll call for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Very good. Second. Excellent. We'll vote. All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Any negative? We're out.
Aye.